Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everyone, I'm your host with my co-host Lynn Smith. I'm Mark Scribner. You're on the Shrimp Tank today, and I want to remind all our listeners you can get this show, all previous shows on Google, Stitch, SoundCloud, YouTube, basically anywhere you can get your podcasts, you can follow the show. The Shrimp Tank is nationally syndicated. It's also in Canada. We have 14 cities, 14 more coming up. It has become the #1 entrepreneurial podcast on iHeart right now. We would love to get your followership. If you could just smash that like button or subscription button, it would be amazing. I want to bring on Jason Greer in just a second. I just want to recognize Lynn Smith, who is also running an amazing company, and she's helping professionals like myself and actually help Jason be more comfortable on live TV, which is really difficult, if you can imagine. So it's great to see you today, Lynn. How are you doing?
It's great to be here. I was so privileged to be a guest on this show and now to be able to co-host it with you with one of my favorite people, Jason Greer. It is a highlight of my day. So thanks for having me.
Thanks. Likewise. So Jason is a diversity specialist in some of the biggest companies across America, and he has some personal experiences that maybe we could share and talk about today. But Jason is the owner of Greer Consulting, wildly successful. We were just talking about offline that he was at a party and someone recognized him from an appearance at CNN, and is trying to grasp with all that, the exposure and stuff, people recognizing him from off the street has been a new phenomenon. But with that said, Jason, it's great to have you on the show today.
Hey, Mark and Lynn, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited about this. Thanks. This is great.
So for our viewers, I'll ask the first question if it's okay. Let's talk about your business and what you're doing these days and some of the successes that you're having.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm the founder and president of Greer Consulting, Inc. Started my company in 2005, basically on a wing and a prayer. When I say a wing and a prayer, it was, God, I got to pay my mortgage next month. So give me a client, right? And we've since grown to, as of a year ago, found out we're the top 5% of employee and labor relations consultants in the country. And we specialize in building the bridge between management and employees, as well as doing a ton of diversity relations training. And the sole focus of our business is really helping employers and employees on ways to get along, with the understanding that, look, we would love to stay on their dime for years on end, because I got kids, I got mortgage, I got private school to pay for. But on the other side of that, it's what can we do to help you in this momentary time of crisis to get to the other side?
And I think right now, actually, Jason, a lot of companies are struggling with this because they know that they have to retain this great talent. And you also bring in the diversity aspect of it. It's not even just the employee relations. How do you weave that into the business, and what does your training look like?
Great question. So one of the things that we're seeing is just across the board, you cannot get around the fact that there are all these significant changes that are happening in the workplace. The workers are younger, they're more diverse from an ethnic, in terms of their ethnicity, in terms of LGBTQ plus, go on down the line. There's all these, systemic changes that are happening. And I think companies and organizations, whether for-profit or not-for-profit, are really trying to figure out, how do we address this while also staying competitive? Because we still have to service the needs of our clients. Well, that's where the diversity piece comes in, because we talk to them about, look, everybody wants a pay increase. You give the pay increase, awesome. Everybody wants better benefits. You give better benefits. But what's going on in the employee breakdown? You have this pocket of African-American employees here, this pocket of white employees here, this pocket of Asian employees here, going down the line. And no one's interacting, yet you're still anticipating that they have to be able to do their jobs on the floor. So where the diversity piece comes from is, we could spend all day long talking about sort of the social drivers of diversity, race, gender, sexual orientation, kind of the things that pass the eyeball test. But there's something else going on underneath it, and that's called our brain dynamics, because our brains are consistently telling us a story about the outside world, and research will show you 98% of what your brain is telling you ain't true, because your brain is just trying to keep you safe. So in the process of keeping you safe, they're basically saying, Lynn is a white female, I'm an African-American male. I can't talk to her because she's white, I'm Black. That makes no sense, because theoretically, what's the first thing we all say anytime there's some type of social upheaval that happens? Why can't we all get along, right? Rodney King being that wonderful prophet that he was for about 30 seconds. Well, it comes back to the fact that from a brain perspective, we're having difficulties getting along because we're filtering people through our experiences and what we've heard about them. So the diversity piece really comes back to the idea of giving people back to themselves, while also understanding that we're all telling a story about the outside world that maybe we need to leave some room to change.
So powerful.
Jason, I kind of feel, again, I'm not an expert. I have a relative that calls me, the white privileged white guy. Like I never really have had to overtly experience racism quite candidly. And I know, deep rooted, it exists at a very deep level.
Sure.
But inside organizations that you're working with, is it more of like a crisis management? Like I could see a bigger brand name company that has identified bad story, and then they're in crisis management, and they're kind of like bringing someone like yourself in to kind of troubleshoot or reduce collateral damage. But is there two elements to this of where people are reacting, or companies really get it and they realize that their talent pool really needs to be integrated in a good way? Like where does it fall? Is it two camps of like crisis management, or are you having resistance walking into a company and saying you've got a problem and they don't recognize they have that problem?
Yeah. First, great question, Mark. What I'll say is actually probably falls into three buckets. The first bucket that we typically see is, we know we have a problem, but we don't want to say anything about it. Because if we say something about it, first, I don't want to get anything wrong, but there are all these legal implications that come with my getting it wrong. So we're just going to kind of hope and pray that it goes away. And maybe we'll celebrate Juneteenth in the process, right? The second bucket is, look, we know we have issues. We know we need to do something about addressing these issues, and we're ready to go forward. But oftentimes the way they go forward is, let's just do a diversity training. Well, the problem is, look, I love training. I could stand up there all day long and do what we do. We have fun, we kick it, we high five each other, people are crying, it's very emotional. But then they go home and I go home. And for 2 to 3 hours, we sing Kumbaya. And then 4 hours later, we're right back to having the same issues. And I think the other side of that we're seeing companies wanting to move toward, if they're not quite able to get there, is this idea that we need to find a way to really be champions for all people, for all groups. But I'm really glad that you led into the question with the idea of one of your relatives calling you sort of the poster boy for white privilege. Not enough, and I was having this conversation with Lynn, one of the things that I'm pushing organizations to do is you need to start recognizing white males and white females in terms of not only their contributions to the organization, but really bringing them into this conversation. Because part of the reason, I'm going to ask you this question, I ask you both this question. Do you like being told what to do?
Emphatically no.
Exactly. That's why we're bosses of ourselves. Exactly.
Right. I hate being told, exactly. I hate being told what to do. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. I just, at this point, I don't know what it'd be like to report to somebody. But keeping that psychology in mind that you don't like being told what to do. Now imagine your organization showing up and saying, you managers now have a responsibility to embrace diversity. And if you don't, we're going to dock your pay. We're going to hold this as a standard for why you can't get that next level promotion because you didn't do enough to mentor, whoever it might be, right? What you feel inside is, you're telling me that I'm going to be deemed for something that you're not even allowing me to be a part of. While at the same time, society, social media is consistently telling me, if I'm a white male, I'm evil. If I'm a white female, I'm evil because I'm a beneficiary of being part of the white male society. And that's so wrong. Does it happen? Sure. Look, the people who burn crosses and protest my family, they were white males, right? Those things happen. But at the same time, you generally have people who want to do the right thing. But dang, if every time I try to do the right thing, I get dinged, I don't want to do it anymore. So we need to start inviting people into that conversation, because what impacts me impacts you. What impacts Lynn impacts me, right? So we need to start forming those commonalities so that we can look beyond the social drivers of race, gender, sexual orientation, those things, and realize that if we want to really bring corporate empathy, well, you can't bring corporate empathy until you give us points of commonality.
Every single company needs to hear that message. It is what makes Jason so incredibly unique from all other diversity trainers. The way that you look at this, the way that you approach this invites everybody to the table and to have that conversation. And it's because of your own personal story. And you touched on it a minute. I don't want you to glaze over it. Tell us
Sure.
about why this is so personal to you and what your family experienced.
No, thank you for that question, Lynn. So I'm dating myself here. I'm 48 years old. So you're talking 1991. I was a senior at Lutheran High School North. The name means nothing to you. I'm just a proud Lutheran North grad, right? My father, Dr. Jerome Greer, has his PhD in educational psychology. He was a principal at a local elementary school. My mom was a nurse, and he's watching all of his colleagues who happen to be white, who have their PhDs. They're getting jobs across the country. They're moving up in bigger positions. And if you know anything about my father is not going to be outdone by anybody, right? So he's like, if it's working for them, it's going to work for me. And he's getting nothing from a multitude of school systems who are basically bringing him in because you're talking the early 90s, so affirmative action was really hot and heavy at that time, right? Well, Dubuque, Iowa comes recruiting him, and they wanted him to be the principal at Irving Elementary School. So he's going to be the first Black principal in Dubuque, Iowa history. What my family didn't know was that we were coming to Dubuque under the constructive integration plan, whereby they were going to bring over 100 Black families into the city over the course of 10 years. The problem is they never got buy-in from the city. They never got buy-in from the residents, who at the time were probably about 94% white. And they weren't just 94% white, they were 94% white, and they had been there for generations, when they can remember when Dubuque was 99.9% white, right? So we became the poster children for forced integration. And as a result, the Klan came in, the KKK, Ku Klux Klan came in, and they organized this group of young men called, and they created this organization called the National Association for the Advancement of White People. And I have no problem with that because we have a National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. But I do have a problem when the sole focus of your organization is to harass my family. So they burned a cross. They ended up burning multiple crosses, and they decided to personalize it. They burned a cross for my father, burned a cross for my mother, and burned a cross for me. The problem is I'm 17 years old. I don't even know who I'm taking to homecoming, let alone trying to figure out what this means that I'm being vilified by these people who don't even know me, right? We're hearing, we were hearing all these folks talking about, Black people are going to come and take our jobs. Well, unless for my father's case, unless you have a PhD in educational psychology, he's no threat to you. My mother, unless you're a nurse, she's no threat to you. I'm 17. I can't even get a job at McDonald's, let alone try to take your job, right? And I'm having some fun with this, but it was this, just imagine being a family that was just the average suburban Black family. And we're living during the Cosby era. So everybody white is telling us, well, America loves Black people. They love Bill Cosby. And I know Bill Cosby is not someone we normally talk about these days, but that was the era of the 90s. And here we are being vilified and condemned simply because my father took a job and we wanted to come live in the city. So I ended up going to Valparaiso University. It was tough because I went from a high school that was 60% African-American in Lutheran North to a college where there was a total of 600 that came in with me as a freshman. And 13 of us were African-American. And 4 years later, only 2 of us walked, right? In terms of getting our degrees. But the city of Valparaiso, they had an active Klan chapter, and their welcome, their orientation for me was a Klan rally. And I'm 18 years old. And then fast forward, you're talking the spring of 1992 or spring of 1993, I'm sorry. And here I am, I'm walking to the gym. I'm home for spring break. And this group of 4 white men jump out of this car, and this guy was holding this bottle, and it was this clear bottle. So I could see the contents of it. And there was this yellow liquid. I'm thinking it's Gatorade. They call me monkey, they call me the N-word, they call me all the things that you could think of in terms of racial epithets, and he throws this bottle at me. I look down at my shirt, and I happen to be wearing a white shirt, and it's stained yellow. Urine. And I only knew that it was urine because it got in my mouth. I would love to tell you that I stood there and I fought because I'm this big, strong man. I can't fight. So don't tell nobody that I can't fight, right? So I ran because I was scared to death. And I remember going home and I'm screaming, I'm crying. My mom's like, why do you smell like piss? And I told her what happened. And she goes, okay, go downstairs. My bedroom was downstairs. Take a shower, give me your clothes, I'm gonna wash them and brush your teeth. Mark and Lynn, I probably brushed my teeth for a better part of 30 minutes to the point where my gums were bleeding because I couldn't get that taste out of my mouth. I showered, I went upstairs, I'm crying, I'm frustrated. I'm like, why did we move to the city? And my mom's listening to me and she goes, but did you die? And I go, what do you mean, did I die? I'm still here. She goes, first, take that bass out of your voice because you're talking to your mom. And I apologize. And she goes, did you die? And I go, no, I didn't die. Why do you keep asking me that? She goes, pardon my language, she goes, you got pissed on. But understand, I grew up in Crystal City, Missouri, which is the southern part of Missouri. The Black people lived what they call under the hill, right? The white people lived on top of the hill, the Black people lived under the hill. She said on Friday and Saturday nights, when the white men would get liquored up at the local bar, they would come down under the hill and they try to pick up the Black women. Well, the Black men who tried to stand up to those white women, whether it be husbands, brothers, uncles, friends, they didn't come home Sunday night. And you just didn't talk about it, but you knew that they were killed, let alone probably lynched. And she goes, so when I ask you, did you die? For as humiliated as you are, understand your life is exponentially better than the lives of so many of your family members who you never met because they were killed just because they took a stand for one of us.
Wow. The perspective that she was able to give you is sobering. I want to I just give you a little bit about myself, just to kind of give you, there's a question behind it. So that's why I want to kind of do it. But unfortunately, I was raised by what I would call Archie Bunker, a racist at the end of the day. And that's what we're exposed to really early on in our raising, just the worst of the worst that you can imagine.
Sure.
But only till I got, a little older, and I obviously formulated my own opinions, I was able to see that everything that I was being told was wrong, fortunately. But I'm wondering, like, in terms of your work, because, and I'm not an expert in this regard, so I don't want to talk out of turn, but a lot of these issues are deeply rooted and they start at a very early age. And then people get into the workforce and they have these opinions or whatever, the falsities in their brains that are there. Yeah. But how difficult is it? Like, should this work that you're doing be also starting at an earlier age? Because when you get into the workforce, it seems to be a little more sticky, like people are entrenched in their thinking unless they're told that they don't have to. I would like to think they would do it because it's the right thing to do, but I don't know if that's the case. So I guess my question is, how hard is it in your work in the workforce to do as compared to starting younger in like high school, where someone like myself at an early age, if I, in grammar school, if I was exposed to that, I only had to get outside that house to be able to see there was a bigger world than I was in. Sure. But I'm just curious, like, what your thinking is around that.
Yeah, awesome question. What I would say to you is I would love to be able to start this from day one with, right, with children of, let me say this. Part of the challenge is that there's so much going on in our brains that we're not even aware of, right? And so when we talk about what age would this be, or at what point in the maturation cycle would it be best to catch somebody? I would argue that it'd be best to catch somebody 3 or 4 generations before they're even born. And here's what I mean by that. Research is clearly demonstrating that the way that we perceive the world is based not only on what you might have heard from your father, but also your DNA, because those stories, those experiences are impregnated upon our DNA and they carry on in a way that we don't know. Our genetic socialization, experiences. I mean, Mark, if you don't mind, can we have some fun here for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you recognized that your father was teaching, based on what you said, you recognized that your father was teaching something that you didn't agree with, or maybe something that you said that the outside world didn't mimic what he was saying.
Mhm.
Do you ever have moments though, and I'm not going to ask you what these moments are because that's a private thing, but do you ever have moments where something will come up in you and you're like, where in the heck did that come from?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think it's your subconscious is so powerful. You don't know why you think and react to things. Sometimes it's, we're exposed to Madison Avenue our entire lives, and like you mentioned, that Cosby thing, and we see all these images coming at us from society, and we don't know, if we're not exposed to it, we don't know what's normal or what's right. And I did think
Yeah.
when you said the Cosby thing, like that's like the doctor and the
Yeah.
whole nuclear family that was put out there, like that's what you're exposed to. But absolutely, you don't even know why you make some of these decisions. And I'm wondering if there's going to be a pill someday, if it's a DNA potential issue. Some kind of a vaccination against racism would be amazing.
Yeah, I'll tell you what the pill is. The pill is experience, right? And so if you'll have some fun with me, if both you and Lynn will have some fun with me, what's 1 + 1?
2,
What's 2 + 2?
4,
What's 5 + 5?
10.
What's 17 times 359?
Don't know.
Right? So what we're talking about here is, people spend a lot of time talking about unconscious bias, right? But I would say that we need to spend more time reframing that and calling it for what it is. It's really non-conscious bias. Because when I asked you what 1 + 1 was, you didn't even have to guess. You just said it off the top of your head. Going down the line, then when I asked you what 17 times 359 was, you're like, I'll have to take a wild guess, because the very act of you thinking diverts precious resources away from the one thing the brain craves more than anything else, and that's keeping you safe. So there are all these experiences. Your brain is basically guiding you through life and it's trying to keep you safe. What if you are able to actually take people at an early age and have them have the experiences of each other, right? Or just as we do in our work, we generally catch people anywhere between the ages of, say, 25 all the way to 60. So that's a lot of life that has been led to the point where now we are trying to get them to understand we can get along and there's a way to get along, but getting along means that we have to understand your story, right? But in the process of understanding your story, that means we need to fight beyond confirmation bias. And confirmation bias looks like this. The first thing someone says when they are accused of being racist, I'm not racist. My best friends are Black, right? And for the record, I grew up in an all-white environment, so I think I'm still being used as a scapegoat for some of my more racist. Right? My best friend in grade school was Black, right? And I'll take it. I'll accept it.
Right.
I'll accept it. We all have our heart.
You're the token African American, right? Yeah.
And you know what? I'll take it. If that makes the world a little bit better, I'll take it. But that confirmation bias, the moment somebody's hit with this idea that maybe they are some type of racist, sexist, your brain automatically sources all of this data quickly to say, no, you're not racist. You're not sexist. You said hi to your wife this morning. How could that be sexist? Right? What we do in terms of, from our diversity approach, is I'm not going to judge you for the way that you show up. Because the moment that I judge you, it's not because I'm a great person, even though I think I'm a good person. It's that I recognize that the moment that I judge you, you shut down. So I might as well be speaking at the wall, because your brain is saying, this guy is smoking crack. Don't listen to him. As opposed to my working to find a point of commonality. The moment we have that point of commonality, you might not agree with everything I'm saying, but your brain has gone from that threat state to that reward state, to the point where you're at least willing to hear what I have to say. So when we talk about what's going on in diversity trainings to this day, I could make a lot of money just standing up in front of a group of folks playing on white guilt. And guess what happens? They feel guilty. Then they go home and they recognize, I'm not guilty. I shouldn't be guilty. I'm a good person. Let me go on social media and find all the reasons why I'm a good person, because I want to find this collective group of people who think just like me. So what I've done is, the moment that I've made you feel guilty and made you feel like crap about yourself, I've pushed you further away from that message and into your own little silo. And it's a silo that it's a silo of like-minded people who are saying the same things, and they're here, I'm here, you're here, they're here, and we're not interacting.
Yeah.
So we do our best to be as non-judgmental as possible with the idea that you are still a good human being. You just have a different philosophy than I do.
It is so important to understand that differentiator. And it is, you know, you wrote the book on this, Racism in the Brain. You're a best-selling author as well. And I think for many of us, as we sit here and we hear your story, it is incredibly powerful. And the outcome is also powerful. You went from what you experienced to this
Yes.
incredibly successful entrepreneur. And there's got to be some secret in that sauce. And I think that anyone listening who is starting a business or looking to build a business, what is it that got you through each roadblock, even as you grow and continue to grow? You're appearing on CNN. So what are some of
Yes.
those ways that you've overcome?
I was going to give you this very textbook business definition, and so people think I'm just a smart guy. I just refuse to give up. My attitude has been, in the weirdest way, I am so thankful for the KKK, because
I was going to say that's a gift. It was a gift, and I probably didn't at the time feel like it, but it sounds to me like it was a gift.
It was a gift. What the KKK did to my family was effectively say, you are less than garbage. We are burning a cross in protest for our family because of the symbolism behind, you are not a child of God. You are a creature of the devil. That's the symbology behind a cross. So I'm 17 years old and I'm sitting back, I'm like, I'm not this guy. But thank you. And at 17, I couldn't say thank you because I didn't understand. But my attitude became, I'm coming for everything they said I couldn't have. So you say that I am less than a child of God. You know what? I'm going to go make the world a better place. My teachers, I remember I got tested. I went to Catholic grade school and I got tested twice for developmental delays, which they basically tried to say that I should be in remedial classes. And when it came to it, both teachers said, we just don't think that Black children are capable of learning at the same rate as white children.
Wow.
I'm going to get 2 master's degrees, which I have, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember somebody telling me, you're somebody I was very close to. You'll never achieve anything without me. Well, I'm now in the top 5% of what I do in the country. Mm. So I guess what I would say to anybody who's seeking to start their business, or they're pursuing their dream job, or they're just pursuing their dreams, channel it. The world is going to tell you what you can't do, and then go out there and prove the world wrong. But understand that there has to come a humility in that, because after you prove the world wrong, what do you do for motivation? Well, you recognize there's still a lot of dreams left to conquer. So you go back out there and you do it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. When you get tired, when you feel like, man, I can't go anymore, that's when, in my case, I drudge up Sister Marie telling, Catholic nun, right? Sister Marie telling my father, Jason, I never learned at the same rate as white kids. Okay, cool. Thanks, Sister Marie. Appreciate that. And you keep moving forward.
It sounds like all you have to do, Jason, is tell you no, and you're going to turn it to on. So it's just tell you can't do something, you're just going to do it.
Not only will I turn it on, I will smile at you and say, thank you. I needed that. Right? So let's roll. Let's go. Right?
Yeah, that's for me too. Like, you just tell me I can't do it, I want it that much more. That's just the way I'm wired. I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel like that. It's probably a weird question. I don't know if you think about this in these terms, but as the business world is, I would love to, if we could personally get to a day, just my own personal, that we never had that box that we checked off for race. It would be, I think it's coming at some point, in the next 10, 15, 20 years, where the choice is going to be, are you a robot or are you a person when you apply to a job? But I'm just wondering, like, in terms of like, how do people that want to start in this space as a company or a business, like, where do they need to start? Because like you said, it could be a function of just reacting to sentiment or the optics or whatever it is. But like, if you're going to start with someone, like, where do you dig into, like, how to get, is it a lot of analytics or is it a lot of interviews? Like, where do people start to get some traction here?
As far as getting traction in
in
becoming a diversity
diversity.
person?
Yeah, to
Yeah.
really, to realize that they have a problem and they're not doing it the right way. Like
Gotcha.
I don't know where does it begin in terms of where you would enter into this solution.
Yeah, unfortunately for sort of our entrance into these situations, it usually happens as a result of some type of conflict, right? Because it's generally not until there's a conflict that the company or organization recognizes or is willing to verbally admit that there's been a problem all along, right? But what I generally tell people is that if you're going to address your employees, if you're trying to get a better idea, go to them directly, because your employees are going to give you ideas. They're going to give you, their attitudes about the company, especially these days, because people are not scared of their employers in a way that they were 20 years ago. And here's part of the reason why. What, you want to fire me? I can go get 5 jobs down the street. Right?
They have leverage. Yeah, they have leverage that they haven't ever had in a long time.
And I actually appreciate that, because look, corporate America needed to be shaken up. Let's be real, right? If you're recording record profits, which is awesome, you can afford to pay your people, right? So, and if you do pay them better, don't just give them the golden handcuffs where I'm paying you really well, but I treat you like garbage, right? So to answer your question, if I was the owner of, I don't know, let's say Starbucks is going through all kinds of issues right now, being organized by labor unions. Go directly to your people, but don't go to your people from the perspective of, hi, my name is Jason Greer and I'm the vice president of operations and I care about you. They're going to be looking at you and be like, where were you 3 weeks ago when we sent in something to the 1-800 number and nobody said anything to us, right? Go to your people and admit when you get it wrong. Your folks, your employees, they're looking for authenticity. They're looking for honesty. They're looking for transparency. They know they're not going to be paid $500,000 a year like you get paid as a VP of operations. But they want to know that you see them as people, that status matters from the perspective of, I'm as important to you as you are to me, right? Go to your people, listen to your people, and then take action as a result of what they've said. If that action is you need to bring in a 6'3" pigeon-toe consultant like me, I'll come in and I'll do it. But if, right, hey, I'll rock with you. But on the other side of that, if that action is, we want you to train our managers how to speak to us, not at us, then get to work. I think whether we're talking about diversity, we're talking about employee relations, labor relations down the line, the one common thread through all of these things is there is a human heartbeat and there's a human mind attached to every single one of them. Your bottom line, whether it's 100 million, 1 million, or 1,000, has hearts, minds, and spirits attached to that, because it's the people who've been driving that. Get to them, talk to them, and hear them.
So well said. So well said. How do people engage you? How do they find you? How do they hire you?
Yeah, great question, Lynn. You can go to my website, hiregci.com. A new website's coming here in another week, which I'm really excited about. I'm very active on LinkedIn, as well as you can find me on Twitter at Labor Diversity. Lynn and I were having a wonderful conversation about the fact that the more media you do, the more interesting people you meet. So you can definitely find me at Labor Diversity, as well as on Instagram, Jason.Greer.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for your time, Jason. Really, I know this is a very small scratch to a really important issue, and it's great that you're doing this work in this space. And it's also great that you can create a profession in the passion that you have around it, which is really inspiring in a lot of ways. Again, for our listeners, I'd like to thank Jason and Lynn today. You can follow the show on all your socials anywhere you want. We'd love to have your followership and your subscription to that, and see amazing people like Jason, but there's 13 some odd cities that are contributing all kinds of great content, which is available on our socials. With that said, I'd like to thank everybody for being on, and we'd love to get an update from you, Jason, down the line too, because I think the beauty of what you do is you can build off of all these experiences that you're going through, and I'm sure it just makes you better at what you do in terms of an understanding and some skill sets and solutions that you're putting together.
Hey, thanks, Mark. And thank you, Mark and Lynn, for having me on the show. You're awesome questions. So definitely subscribe to the show. This show's awesome.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, everybody.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.